was a deliberate choice that we knew we wanted to do this, but we didn't want to rush headfirst into it. And actually, that for me, that was really important as Mr. Enthusiasm. Go, let's go! A kid in a sweet shop. No. We made a really conscious choice to go, well, we're going to take real slow steps into this so that we don't break us.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy approach to non-monogamy. However, it's important to remember that everyone does it a little bit differently, and the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please be aware that we aren't doctors or therapists. Consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 215. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have an exciting interview with Michaela and Paul. They've been together about 3 years. They're from the UK, and we have some fantastic conversations with them.
Yeah, maybe a couple of the key things that come out in this conversation is a really amazing conversation about bisexual men and the lifestyle, and a couple of awesome conversations about transitioning relationships, and Michaela kind of talking about how her and her ex-husband transitioned to a friendship, and they're super supportive of each other. I don't know. It's a beautiful interview, and we're really excited to share it, and we're really thankful and grateful that they reached out and are here to share their story. So thank you, Michaela and Paul. We appreciate it.
Yes. Before we jump into their interview, we do have a few quick announcements. This intro may be a little bit longer than normal because we have some exciting events coming up.
New events we've never talked about ever before.
Yes. But if you're not interested in those, feel free to skip ahead a couple minutes and then jump into the interview. But we don't encourage that. We'd rather you listen and hear about these events because we want you to come join us.
Whoa.
I was excited.
She's so excited. You can't see it, but my hair is literally blown back.
Right? Anyway, first of all, a huge, incredible thank you to our Patreon community. We're so grateful for each and every one of you, and it's continued to grow. Thank you for that. That's amazing. If you're interested in looking for community, we highly recommend going to check it out. We have an ongoing monthly Q&A. We have men's and women's groups, and we have a MeWe chat. So to find out more information on that, go to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and click on the Patreon button. Also, the dates for the January events will be up on the website as well.
Also, one of the perks that didn't get mentioned about being a Patreon member, the stuff we're about to talk about, they already know about.
Right.
Because we announced it to them ahead of time.
Exactly.
So, first up,
virtual events.
We got some virtual events. Every month, we've been doing virtual meet and greets since the beginning of the pandemic. We took a couple of months off, but we're back, and now we're doing 2 a month. So we have a virtual meet and greet on January 15th,
Yep.
And we have one on January 26th.
Yep. So those are our standard virtual meet and greets. They are open to anyone. You do not need to be a Patreon member to join. The requirements are that you must be open-minded and respectful of everyone joining. To go to our website and sign up, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, click on the community events tab and virtual events. It's all there, all the information. We'd love to have you join us. Again, that's the 15th and the 26th of January.
Also, on the 14th, we have a different kind of virtual event.
Yes.
So the name is a little bit misleading.
It is.
It is a virtual play party. However,
not that kind of play.
It's not that kind of play. We met back in 2019. We met an amazing human in Portland at a conference that we were at, named Gary. He is, and this is a real thing, he is a strategic play consultant.
Yes.
So he partners with large companies and professionals to help them level up their skills.
And small businesses like us.
Yes. Huge two-person conglomerations like the Normalizing Non-Monogamy podcast.
Right.
So he partners with companies and professionals to help them level up their skills. He's an improv comedian, but he basically takes what he calls transformative play and integrates it in a way to basically help people build relationships and grow. And so he, through the pandemic, has taken his ability to do this in person and made it virtual. So we're super excited about this. We've never done anything like this, and we're pumped for it. So yes, we're super excited. So you can sign up, again, right under the same place that you found the information on the other virtual meet and greets. There is a way to sign up for this event. It is on January 14th. It is a Friday night, and we're stoked. So definitely want to check that out. You don't want to miss this.
Right. It's so exciting. We can't wait. And yeah, come join in this unique opportunity.
Don't let it unique up on you. I messed it up. All right. Anyway, we also have some in-person events coming up. We've mentioned our New Orleans meet and greet. That is on February 7th.
Yes. Sign up for that. Come on, people. We want to see you. We want to meet you.
Yeah.
We do have some people signed up and we want more.
We're going to take over a bar in New Orleans. It's going to be awesome. And one quick thing about New Orleans and COVID. New Orleans has a regulation, a requirement that all like public spaces like that check vaccine cards at the door. So that is part of the reason we're continuing to go through with this. Even though it's sort of an indoor-outdoor space, COVID cards will be checked at the door. And we have another party. I just blew it.
I know.
Now they know it's a party. We have another event coming up the following weekend.
Yes, on February 12th in the evening, we have a pool party at a clothing optional place. Again, vaccines cards will be checked at the door. And a special note about this event, it will be limited to 20 couples.
And as we said before, we mentioned this. We announced this to our Patreon community a couple of days ago. So about 5 out of the 20 slots are already filled. And we just want to really another quick note. It's not necessarily couples, but we're using a system called the PAL system.
Yes, good clarification.
So you can come with anybody. You just cannot come alone. And this event is co-sponsored by Happy Kitten.
Yes.
Pleasure School and Events.
Yes.
We're super excited. They've got some exciting stuff coming up. And the organizer of Happy Kitten also owns the pool. So we've rented the pool and we're sort of working together with them to create this amazing sort of clothing optional meet and greet / Party? So
Not that our other meet and greets aren't parties.
Right, but this one is a little different.
Yeah, it's a little different. So all the details are on our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the community events tab and in-person events.
Yes. We hope to see you there. We're super excited for it. And the last event that we have on the calendar officially, but we have some others coming up that haven't been announced.
Right, we're working on other ones, but the other one that's actually planned is actually not until March 26th, but that's a Saturday, and it's going to be in San Francisco.
Yes. So if you listen to episode 188, you might remember Amy. Amy owns a handful of pole dance studios. So she has offered to teach a private pole dance class and then let us use the studio afterward to do like a mixer and hang around and chat and meet and greet and that type of thing. So that is going to be on the 26th, as Emma said, the 26th of March in the evening. It's a pole dance class and meet and greet, and we're super stoked for that. That one is also limited to about 30 people. So if you're interested, definitely sign up, and we hope to see you there.
And that was a lot, but we're so excited. Go to our website, again, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. We say it all the time, but go check it out. All of the information for these events are there. If you have any questions, feel free to email us or send us a voicemail on the Contact Us tab there on our website. Also, on our website, you'll find podcast show notes for every episode, so go check those out as well.
Yes, and with that, let's jump into the interview with Michaela and Paul, and we'll see you all on the other side.
Let's go.
Welcome to the show, Paul and Michaela. We're excited to have you here. We're excited to learn more about you. We've been trying to make this work for a little while. Apparently, time zones across the pond are a little bit difficult sometimes, but we're happy to be here. We're happy to be making it happen. So welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Do you mind starting by introducing yourselves for the listeners, since we only know a little bit about you, and people listening obviously don't know anything. So start with introductions.
Sure. No, you go ahead.
I'll go first, shall I?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Michaela. I'm 44. I wasn't necessarily in a non-monogamous relationship before I met Paul, but kind of was a little bit. And I've always been kind of semi-open to the idea, so it didn't come as a big surprise to me when we started discussing it. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And how about you, Paul?
Well, I'm Paul, obviously. So I'm a little bit older. I haven't hit 50 yet, so that's good. We'll keep it that side of that, I think. So no, we've been together for a little while, but there was no non-monogamy prior to that. So
yeah, we've been together 3 years this weekend, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We made it.
Yeah. Well, and so Michaela, you said before you and, well, we know this because we got a little bit of intel before we started recording, but you, and what you kind of just said was you had a little bit of experience in non-monogamy before you met Paul, and you've always been maybe open to the concept of it. Do you mind taking us back to like the beginning for you and what
Sure.
that has looked like?
Right. So before I met Paul, I was married. I'd been married about 13 years, I think, at that stage. And we had, I say towards the end, we had more of a friendship as opposed to a marriage at the end. And there had been discussions about opening up the marriage and seeing other people. And I'd always been very, no, that's not what I want to do. That we had talked about a lot, and actually had even bought books and read the books and discussed it and so on. But it just didn't feel right with my ex-husband. And then I would say about maybe 2 months before I met Paul, I went out on a date with someone about telling my ex-husband and kissed this other person, and then came home and told my husband all about it, and he was very excited about it. He was very excited about the fact that I'd gone out on a date. And it kind of gave us the green light to open up the relationship. So he was happy with me going out on dates and seeing people, and provided that we kept our marriage as it was, because we had a very happy marriage apart from the fact that we weren't really attracted to each other anymore. So about, I would say, soon after that happened, about a week after that happened, I started talking to Paul online and met him 2 weeks after that. And I was still seeing other people at the same time. I was going out dating, and I had a few people that I was seeing on a regular basis, which my husband knew about and was very supportive of. And in fact, I told my ex-husband about Paul straight away, and he was very supportive of our relationship from the beginning, even now. Yeah. Even though after about 3 months, I said, this marriage isn't actually working. And the end of our marriage was not because of my relationship with Paul. It just happened to happen at the same time. It was kind of like everything, a bit of serendipity. Things kind of came together, and it was enough is enough. Let's just set ourselves free, as it were. We stayed living together for about 1.5 years afterwards, quite happily as friends, while I was still going out with Paul. It just happened to be that I had a boyfriend and a husband at home, and he was pretty cool with it. And my family, when I told them, were pretty cool with it, although a bit surprised. That was basically it. But when we got together, my idea at the time was not to have an open relationship as such. In fact, when we talked about it to begin with, and I said I wasn't ready to share him just yet, just give us a bit of time to kind of bed in ourselves and see where we are before we get to the stage where we can bring other people in, or even discuss bringing other people into the relationship. Yeah.
Which was absolutely the right thing to do.
Which was the right thing to do.
For sure.
You have to kind of have
for the two of you.
Foundation before you go and jump into anything else.
That makes total sense. And just really quick to back up, Michaela, when you said you went out and you kissed some other guy, and that was sort of the green light, you told your husband about it, but you had talked about opening it up, but you hadn't.
We hadn't discussed it openly to the point of me going out on a date with someone else.
Okay.
We talked about it in terms of maybe getting a third party in, or maybe seeing a dominatrix of some sort. He was really into that. And I didn't feel comfortable with the idea of it. But it wasn't the relationship itself. It wasn't the idea of opening it up. It's just I didn't trust him in that way. And I think that's one of the main things when it comes to having an open relationship, a non-monogamous relationship. You have to have that trust built in there. And it wasn't comfortable doing that with him.
Okay.
That's one of the things we've talked about a lot since. And I've actually talked about this issue recently with my ex-husband as well. Because I feel like I went from, I've dated someone, and he goes, good, go out and date everyone. I'm like, great. And I did straight away. And we never went back to having that conversation properly. And I think looking back on it now, we should have actually sat down and discussed boundaries. And we didn't do any of that. It was just like, Michaela's out for dates, and that's it. And that's all he knew. He knew where I was. Because I let him track my phone in case anything happened, and I always told him where I was, but we never actually sat down and discussed how is this going to impact us on a day-to-day basis? What are our boundaries? Do you stay out? Do you not stay out?
Yeah. Well, and so for that first experience, that was sort of, maybe I'm misinterpreting it, but almost a little bit of a risk, right? Like you had talked about it, and you had thought like, well, in theory we could do this, and you just kind of went for it one day and like, well, I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I'm a little bit impulsive at times. And I think it actually speaks well of our relationship. I knew I was safe enough to come back and have that conversation with him. It could have gone either way, but I knew it wouldn't have gone terrible. It would have just been like if we hadn't been happy with it, that would have been the end of it. As far as I'm concerned, we would have maybe tried to work harder on our marriage. But as it turns out, it was just like, no, go have fun. This is what I've been wanting you to do for ages. So.
And who brought it up initially between the two of you?
Him. He did.
Okay.
Yeah. Years
but you
before,
weren't
actually.
And
years before. Okay.
Oh, okay. But you weren't necessarily comfortable with him doing that. It sounds like.
I just wasn't comfortable with the idea of us both doing it. I wasn't interested in seeing other people, and it felt more like a band-aid. And it's like, you're not going to stop the marriage by opening it up, you know. So it was just felt the complete end of it there and then if it'd been done at that stage. Because even though we had been reading and we'd been talking, we weren't at that level of communication to be able to do it in a way that would be safe for our marriage. It would have spelled the end of it. Yeah.
Right.
It's a bit like having kids. You don't have kids if you want to save your marriage, you know.
Right.
So you don't open up your relationship if you want to save your marriage. You know, it's not the thing to do.
Definitely not.
Right. And I appreciate it. Like, we're not trying to grill you. I think just trying to understand that, like, is a sort of an interesting approach, right? Like, we talked about it. We've come to the conclusion that it could probably work. But there was no like, hey, I'm going to go out on a date. It was sort of like a spontaneous occurrence that happened. And then you knew that you could deal with whatever we'll call them the consequences or the fallout, whether it was we keep doing this or we don't do this, like wherever it goes, you were confident in your ability to navigate that. And I think but I think it speaks to our relationship. We are still very, very good friends. So no matter what we had, even when we were having that discussion about me kissing someone else and possibly going out on dates, we are still very good friends. The main thing in our marriage was actually our friendship. At the end, we had a companionship. It wasn't about being sexual partners as such towards the end. So it was like he had, and I have. Bless him, he has total compersion for everything I've ever been through. You know, we had a bit of a tiny breakup ourselves, and my ex-husband's the one who picked me up off the floor and put me to bed and bought me chocolate and, you know, made everything okay for those 2 weeks, you know. So he still is a very good friend of mine and very empathic over the whole thing.
He's a very lovely man.
He's a lovely man. He's a lovely man, just not the man for me.
Right. Well, and I love that you two have figured out how to have that friendship and how to have that still be in each other's lives. So it sounds like you're both very important to each other, but the relationship itself just didn't work out. So exactly. that doesn't mean that you can't still have a friendship and
exactly. I mean,
and a
we
relationship of a different kind.
Well, I wouldn't say dates, but we do go out on dates. Well, we go out to gigs and stuff together, and we talk quite often, and you know.
Go out for dinner.
And he's still part of my family. And he's still, and I was just telling someone last week, it's like if I had anything happen and I needed some support or help, he would be one of the first people I would go to, outside you, of course. You know, I would always send him for help, and the same goes for him, you know.
Right. It's amazing.
In total for about 18 years before we broke up, so it's a long time.
Yeah, you don't just erase that history. Right. Like it doesn't just evaporate one day. Right. Yeah. And so, that's amazing. And thank you for sharing that. And so then you met Paul but you said you still had some other kind of partners. And then you were like, well, let's do the monogamy for a little while to build the foundation. And how did that all work?
Yeah,
well, that was weird, wasn't it?
That was a bit weird.
Even when we got together, because obviously I knew that Michaela was in an open relationship and that she was seeing other people, and that was absolutely fine by me.
Right.
And we we became a little bit more serious, didn't we? And those other relationships kind of passed away, didn't they? They moved
I think
on.
sometimes relationships like that, they do come to a natural end, and a lot of them. Usually when they kind of drop off the radar, you kind of pick up others, and I wasn't bothering because I was kind of so focused on you at the time. I didn't feel like I need to kind of fill my Sunday evenings because I had a standing Sunday date, for example. So yeah, as they came to a natural conclusion, I didn't kind of back them up again.
But it wasn't through, we made a conscious choice to be monogamous or exclusive or anything like that. Even when we talked about exclusivity right at the beginning, we said, well, look, if you're seeing someone else, just let us know. Like, let's have that conversation, just be open about it. But it was not a problem. It was never a blocker. It just naturally didn't happen. And I think, because you were in an open relationship when we started, it was always part of the conversation space. So every time we talked about things, it was like, like when you first start a relationship and you do those sort of sexual compatibility things, and we did all those, and we didn't say no to anything, and so it was,
there was do nothing.
Which was quite nice. And it was like we were just bang on. But the group stuff always came up in that conversation. We were always open to it, but it was a bit of a not now.
Not yet.
Because we haven't built that level of relationship and trust between each other to do that. And I think in hindsight, at that time, I probably would have wanted to do that more than we did. And it was always you putting the brake on it. I was definitely the gas at that point. But actually, looking back on it now, that would have been absolutely the wrong thing for us to do as a group. And having been through so many experiences now and get to where we are now, there's no way we were in a relationship place to do that at that point. So I think that was the right break to apply. But I get a little bit enthusiastic about things.
Yes.
Probably my one flaw is I get a little, new and shiny, let's go.
Paul's very much, fuck yeah, let's do it. And I'm like, just kind of think about it a little bit.
There's definitely an element of that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the beginning, like one of the first things we talked about was like having threesomes or whatever. I'm like, I'm not ready to share you just yet. Can we just like get ourselves together first and see where we are? Because I think doing it on the off, it could have been, I think it would have been the end of us. It would have been, it's a flash in the pan kind of attitude.
It would have been really good.
It would have been good.
But it would have been quite brief.
It would have been brief. It would have been
a very bright burning candle.
Yeah, exactly. And it would have been a distraction to whatever set us up.
What makes you say that, just out of curiosity?
I think just the level of enthusiasm, we would have done that, but we didn't have that closeness. We were still working out what a relationship was for us, rather than just being sexual partners. Really horny sexual partners, but sexual partners nevertheless. And I don't think we'd built that level of intimacy between us, right? So
to be able to have an open, long-lasting.
Yeah, I think we do. I think particularly with my enthusiasm, I think probably new and shiny, we'd eventually have stepped on each other's toes or upset each other in some big way, and that would have caused a fight. And we didn't have the conversation to sort of sit and understand why we needed to sort that out, and it would have probably exploded.
Yeah. I think some of the things that we've actually come across in the last few months, for example, had we had the same issues happen at the beginning of our relationship, we wouldn't even have bothered to talk about it. For me, that would have been the end of it. Yeah. I wouldn't be bothered to like even discuss it. I was just like, I'm very black and white sometimes, and I would be like, not worth talking. That's it. Bye-bye.
Maybe we just didn't have that level of investment in each other at that point.
And at that stage, we were so invested in the whole NRE thing. I mean, we still have NRE 3 years on, but the NRE lasted a long time. So,
What listeners cannot see is how like amazing you two are like together and watching the like interactions and the facial expressions. And
some people would say adorable.
Yeah.
I like that. We're actually holding hands as well.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that we always do. Whenever we're talking about something difficult, no matter what it is, we always hold hands.
Yeah, so the harder the conversation, the holder
the stronger you hold it. Sometimes our hands are a bit red, but it actually works for us because it also means you have to be physically close to each other. So there's no shouting across a room. You can't do that if you're holding hands. So you have to sit and you have to look at each other and you have to look at each other in the eye. It's actually it works really well. All right, the eye that works.
I like that. I would also just offer the I don't know, advice, or we've heard as well that sitting side by side when you're talking about difficult things, it really signifies that you're on the same side rather than sitting across from each other.
That's a really good shout. We often talk walking, actually.
Yes.
So we'll get outside the house, so you lose all the trappings of the place you're in, and all of that complexity is like, I've done the washing, or what, all of that goes away. You go outside, and being outside is nice, but you're walking hand in hand, side by side. Yeah. So
the side by side thing is quite interesting because even now, when we go out for dinner, we all sit side by side, which makes it very awkward for a lot of restaurants because it means they're having a 4-person table. But it's just like, we enjoy that closeness, and I think having that physical closeness when you're having a different conversation is super important.
It is.
Yeah, it is. Paul, I want to circle back real quick and ask you, did you have any experience in non-monogamy at all before meeting Michaela?
No, none whatsoever. I was in a very long-term relationship prior to this one, so that was 25, 26 years. I had 2 children with my ex-partner, and that didn't work out for us.
Okay. So, like, you didn't even have any, like, inkling about non-monogamy. Like, it just wasn't
I'd read about it, and I was aware of it, and certainly in hindsight, and we'll probably talk about this a bit later on, but sort of I had a sort of a desire to be more polyamorous than it was necessarily in an ethical non-monogamy thing. But my ex-partner was absolutely, completely dead against it, and that was fine. right? I'd always put that to one side. But then once I came out of that relationship, and it wasn't the reason the relationship broke up at all, then, I found someone wonderful to start to explore that with over the remaining the time since then. So that's been really nice. But it wasn't something I was desperate and hankering for. But it was a nice thing that came along at the same time.
Yeah, it's something you were interested in, at least learning more about and trying to explore for a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think most people always, even if they're not non-monogamous, there was always a little conversation between couples about, like, should we have a threesome? Should we do this or whatever? And for some people, it's like, absolutely no. And,
Yeah, and I guess maybe it's different for me as well because I'm not heterosexual. And, so that's... And it's not a thing... I'm not heterosexual, so and it's not something I've been suppressing. It's just something that didn't need to be explored. But having come out of that relationship, it's like, well, I can feel like I can just we can explore that as well. And actually, that works quite well with the ethical non-monogamy, right? So, and I guess maybe that's a little bit unusual. I think the sort of swinger thing is that it's always the women that are bisexual and not the men. So we flip that on its head, which has its own challenge, but hey, I like it, so it's cool.
Yeah, well, I like it too. Surprisingly,
who knew?
Yeah, it's fine.
That's awesome.
Well, and I was just curious, Paul, did your previous partner know this about you, and it was just sort of like they knew, but it was just never going to be something you explored, and that was sort of the agreement you were in that relationship?
Certainly, she didn't know that I wanted to do the non-monogamy thing. It just didn't really come up as a conversation
point. What about your bisexuality?
I was bisexual before I met her, but it wasn't a conversation point that we really talked about a lot, to be fair.
Okay.
It was just no, this is the relationship I'm in and I'm fine with that. And at no point really through that time did I ever sort of really go, oh God, this is really frustrating or limiting to me. It wasn't like that at all. Our relationship
it was lacking. It was just...
It was solid. It failed for different reasons than sexual ones, actually.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And now that you're in the relationship you are in now, it gives you that opportunity to go down that path a little more and explore that.
Absolutely, yes. And that's something we've grasped with both hands.
Yeah. But I think it's important, personally, I've tried women. I'm sorry, women. Love women dearly, but it just does nothing for me, which is fine. And it's usually like, oh no, I first found my attraction for women, and that's how we have our relationship. Well, that's not the case for me at all. And I'm more than happy for Paul to explore whatever he wants to explore. It's his chance to do it. So we might hold him back.
Yeah, and I think I want to definitely come back to this, right? Because there is a lot of stereotypes, and it's not even really a stereotype, just it is very prominent in swinging where the women are, in a way, expected to be bisexual and the men are not, or are expected to be straight. And so I want to definitely come back to that, but maybe it would be useful to understand what your dynamic looks like today. Is it a mix of poly and swinging? Is it some amorphous thing that you've developed of your own? That what does it look like for you?
What does your non-monogamy look like?
Labels are so tricky, right?
Exactly.
I know, right?
It's a swinging kind of poly type of thing. It is whatever you want it to be at that moment, to be honest. We do kind of tend to pick things up and then drop them for a little while, and you get tired of the sex admin. It was a joke about the sex admin, but it's actually quite tiring. So, for our very first proper experience together, we had a threesome with a man.
I sound curious about that.
No, I'm trying to remember. That's what it was. But we have actually also been with a woman, and we are still looking for the ideal couple. We've met a lot of couples. And there's only been very few who've actually gone we'd like to explore more with you guys, because we do feel like ideally we want people that we could be friends with. And I think that's what everyone's looking for. But the problem is when you go out looking for them, they're just notches on bedposts.
And that's the problem. I think in the swinging community, at least in our experience, and I'm not generalizing in any way, right? But there's a lot of people who just want to have sex and that's it. And for us, that doesn't really hold that much attraction.
Because I can have sex anytime.
Yeah, we can do that, right? So, that doesn't hold that much attraction. So it's we want people that we can be friends with and make a connection to before we'll have sex with them. And that makes the swinging community almost a little bit hostile to that, because a lot of people just want to get numbers up, or they want to meet at a club and have sex and then they never talk to you ever again. And that really doesn't work for us. So we're really positive about meeting people socially and make sure that we like them before we'll take our clothes off with them. And so when you sort of say, well, which label is it? It's like, it's difficult because we don't kind of fit into the box, at least the people we've met anyway, in the swinging community. But we're not quite fully poly either, although we're more like that. So it's a bit, I don't know. Let's call it the Michaela and Paul plan.
I think it's just the idea. We just kind of welcome the idea of having other amazing people in our relationship or surrounding our relationship, whether they're men, women, couples. We really don't care. We just want nice people around us. That's all, and we want to be part of other people's nice bubbles.
If we can't have a drink with them and enjoy their company, then what are we doing? Right. So.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that sounds very ideal. Right? Like,
that's the issue, isn't it? Everyone's looking for the ideal and no one gets it. So we're possibly looking for unicorns that don't exist. But we have met a couple recently that seem like the ideal couple.
They really do.
They really do. But even then, I'm like, well, but there's still people. So we all come with flaws. We all come with our own little packages and just being accepting of that.
And it's difficult, right? People in the swinging community talk a lot about how it's difficult to find that 4-way connection. And that is difficult. And it's you always like, who's going to have to make a little bit of compromise?
I don't want to have to take one for the team, and neither should you.
We will never, and that's the problem. We will never do that.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I can see you really, really like her, or you really like him, but I'm just not fuck yeah. And if it's fuck yeah or no, right? We're so binary about that, and it just makes our life our life. It makes finding the right sorts of people difficult. Having said that, when we find them, it's going to be.
Oh, I feel sorry for them.
Insane. Yeah, it's going to be full on, and it's going to be amazing. So, and well, hopefully,
we'll see.
Yeah, well, and one thing with that, right, is if the relationship so to speak, is built on a friendship, right? Sometimes that imbalance is okay, right? If one of you is maybe more if one of the pairs is more into each other than the other, if the friendship is solid, then maybe that's okay, right? And it can be a little imbalanced, but that still takes a lot of security to get there, because that can be really intimidating. If two of you are hanging out watching a movie and two of you are upstairs in the bedroom, like going at it like bunnies, right? That's fine. It can be a difficult thing, right? But yeah, I mean, maybe it totally works with that 4-person dynamic. So yeah, it's exciting.
I don't think we're limited just to finding other couples. Like we spend most of our energy trying to find couples, but not exclusively. So if we could find, but if we could find, we like the idea. Well, we both enjoy playing with men.
Yes.
So actually, a third man would be amazing. But the single men are tough to navigate.
Yeah, for sure. Emma, you were going to ask a question, and then you thought I was going to interrupt you, and then I interrupted you. But you invited me. You invited the interruption.
I did. What I was going to ask was, you said you were in your relationship, you were monogamous for a little while. And then when you started opening it up, how did that look at the beginning? Like what steps did you take, and how did that feel to start going down that path?
Jesus, do you know what? I don't even bloody remember.
I do. So pre-COVID, I was pre-C like everyone else, we used to do a lot of traveling. So we were going away for weekends, like every 6 weeks thereabouts. And we had a weekend to Liverpool of all places. And had a fantastic time that weekend.
Such a good weekend. If you ever get a chance, go to Liverpool.
But I remember on the way home we were talking about fantasies, because we spend an awful lot of time in the car, and it's actually good talking time when you're in the car. And we were talking about fantasies, and I was talking about how ideally what I'd really like is to have like this kind of role play thing where you have a dominatrix come in, and she would show me, a naive young thing, how to be a dominatrix, and then Paul be our subject.
Terrible. So
as soon as we got home, we booked someone. So I made a point of finding someone soon after, and we booked a sex dungeon in a really weird little place. And that was kind of like our first little soft intro into bringing someone else in, but in a safe way, because it wasn't someone you're going to have a relationship with. It's someone who basically is there to do a job, as it were. And that's all we wanted for that time. But it was a good way of just seeing how would I feel about Paul being with someone, or someone touching Paul, or, and just going from that point. Yeah. As it turns out, she wasn't a very good dominatrix at all. And we sent him on our way home quite soon after. But it did make me feel like I was super comfortable with him being with someone. I was really worried to begin with because we were so into each other that I would feel a bit uncomfortable about her being with you in any way, shape, or form, and it wasn't an issue. And then...
Do you think that was compersion?
Yeah, because we were having such a good time. It was lovely. He was having such a good time. He was having a good time, but I kind of wasn't because she was boring me.
Well, we had a good time.
I mean, if you're going to hire a dom, don't have a turn around to me and say, what should we do now, Michaela? And I'm like, that's why you're here.
It's literally the worst question to ask when you're supposed to be in charge.
I'm supposed not to know anything. But soon after that, we actually got invited we went onto a site.
So I remember how we got to the site.
Okay.
So in the UK, there's one site which is the predominant one, which everyone goes to. We were in a car going into London.
Yes.
And we listened to we listened to the news on the radio, and they talked about a swinging camping festival which had happened, and it was all very like ha ha ha, look at all these people who were going to shag in fields, right? But they mentioned the site name,
and we're like, let's look that up.
And we went, should we do that? And we kind of looked at each other and kind of went, fuck yeah. So we did it in the car. I did it from my phone, as I remember. And then we found people that looked exactly like your friends, which was really funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, and it wasn't them. That was a bonus. But that was kind of... And then once you've got a profile, and you've had that conversation about doing things, and it sort of naturally sort of flows from there because you're sort of curious and enthusiastic, and you're kind of looking and seeing what people are around, and we need to get verified to try and make us seem more legit, and what photos should we do, and it kind of takes on a life.
It's a lot of fun.
And it just kind of took on a life of its own, but it was always just kind of it was kind of
organic in a way. It was kind of like, well, we talk about something, and we do kind of tend to talk things about and tend to do them straight away if we feel like we're inclined that way. And it went from signing up to the site to then meeting a few people, and then we got invited to our sex party, our very first sex party, which was in a private house for about 12 couples.
No, it was more than that. 20 maybe.
Yeah, it was very strange, and the whole idea was like, we've also had to say when we go out, whether we're going out to actually meet other people, or we're going out to a club, or we're going out on whatever to a party, we're going out on a date together, but we just have to be going to a place where there's other people around who, if you wanted to, you could have that kind of interaction with, without it being frowned upon or being thrown out of a pub because you're making eyes at the barmaid, because they're kind of expected. We went from having the dom thing that was sometime in July, to going to this party like the month after. And we chatted to people all the way through, and we met a few people for socials, for drinks, that we kind of became friends with a little bit. That sex party was a bit of an eye-opener because it was a bit like going to a PTA meeting, which I wasn't expecting. For some reason, everyone has this idea that, everyone who's into open relationships and so on will be all very...
Be in their mid-20s and super hot and blonde. And
it was like going to a women's institute selling jam, almost.
It was... But that was a really good introduction, actually.
Yeah, but it was. Because it was realistic, if nothing else.
We learned something really important there, which is that it doesn't fit one socioeconomic group at all. It cuts absolutely across every single type of person you'll meet. Judges,
every age, every kind of,
judges and painters and builders and drivers and, every sort of person in between. And I think that's really, that's one of the really nice things about it, actually, is that, sex is fundamental, and it doesn't matter what type of person you are or what ethnic background you have, you still have a fundamental need for, desire and want and, and validation, I guess, maybe. It's quite nice.
Yeah.
And once everyone's clothes come off, socioeconomic status kind of goes out the window.
Exactly.
There's not very much to tell the difference.
But it was interesting because I very much made a point of like, I'm going to this party, but I'm not going with the intention of doing anything. I wanted to just kind of get the feel of people and see if there are people even. I might be a little bit picky, but I'm very picky about who I even kiss. So,
No, we went deliberately with the intent not to do anything.
Not to do anything. To the point that I actually wore something that I couldn't even unzip myself out of.
Yeah, that's true. You couldn't. That's true. Although that might have just been a challenge.
It was a challenge.
But we made the conscious choice to do that it was a deliberate choice that we knew we wanted to do this, but we didn't want to rush headfirst into it. And actually, that for me, that was really important as Mr. Enthusiasm. Go, let's go! A kid in a sweet shop. No. We made a really conscious choice to go, well, we're going to take real slow steps into this so that we don't break us. Because actually, we refer to it as flexing the ruler. So you imagine a sort of plastic ruler that's so far you can bend it and it will shatter. But if you can bend it a bit, then you learn something about yourself, you learn something about your relationship and each other. And that's fine, because it will go back to where it was before. But if you bend it too far too fast, it'll break and it will start to really cause fractures, which we'll never repair. So it was really conscious and decision on our part to make sure that we didn't do that. So that's why it was a slow burn, sort of at the beginning.
Yeah.
That's it, really.
But it was an interesting part anyway. I know some of the people there got very upset with me specifically because I wasn't getting involved. And that's fine. You can be upset with me as much as you want. I don't owe you anything, and you don't owe me. So, having said that, we were invited again, and that's when they got really upset.
Not again.
But it was interesting. In fact, we actually met a couple there at our first party that we're still friends with, that we kind of tried to soft swap with, and it gets to the point where you become too friendly with someone, you're not friend zoning them almost. It's like, I know you too well to actually want to have your bits near my bits. It's not going to happen.
Which is a dichotomy for us.
Yeah.
Because we want to be friends with people.
Which is ironic.
And and then we want to sleep with them. But we don't want to be too friendly with them because then we don't want to sleep with them
You
anymore.
don't want to ruin the allure of it all,
It's a knife edge.
It's almost like you need to sleep with them sooner and then keep continuing.
Exactly. Get the sex out of the way, and then we'll talk about, pensions.
Please never. But it's interesting because that couple that we're sort of semi-dating and we met just recently, and we've really liked them. But we want to get to meeting people quite quickly from online chat, and it took quite a long time with them. We've had a lot of online chat, and we were really worried going into that meet with them. Yeah, it was just a social, right? Just the same as always. But we were really worried that we liked them too much because we'd shared so much with them and we'd had such a great set of banter over the last 4 weeks or so. And suddenly it was like, but we might just not, they might just be our friends now. Like, luckily they're not just our friends, so that's all right.
But it is a fine line because it's a bit like when I was dating pre-Paul. It's like you want to go from the quick flirty chat to, am I going to invest too much time on you and then meet you face to face? And it was a waste of the last 2 weeks, messaging backwards and forwards. And always, I'm not keen on that kind of emotional investment in that way. It's like it's either there or it's not.
You just want to get down.
Whereas Paul's like, yeah, let's just chat all the time. I'm like, no, can we just meet and then we can just move on? Because straight away if you meet someone, if you like them or you don't like them. And we've too often had cases where we've been talking to people, we meet and we go like, oh no, absolutely not. Like, you do a good chat on messaging or WhatsApp or whatever, but when it comes face to face, you can't handle it because you can't. And that's important to me.
And we're quite intimidating.
We're not intimidating. Stop saying that.
No, we're always really aware when we meet single people, particularly single guys, we're a unit. We'll always be a unit. And then they're coming into that unit. So it's a difficult, it is intimidating.
Focus on you can be quite...
It is intimidating for them. And we've had a few sort of, not issues with that, but it's just something to be really aware of. And we sort of overcompensate. It's like, well, are you okay? Are you okay? Is this all right with you? Because we're going to be fine. Like, are you all right? And that's an important... that can be quite tough, actually. So,
especially when we're like two very keen puppies.
Yeah, it's super important that you say that, right? Because, a lot of the time you hear about couples in the unicorn hunting, right, looking for another woman, but it's no different if it's another guy or another person of any gender, right? That like they're a person, and you do have some couple privilege, right? Like you two wield a certain amount of power as the two of you versus them coming into that. So being extra mindful of that is really great, and so I appreciate you two.
Because we always check in with each other, which is fine, but they have no one to check in with. Right. So it's like there's no one there to make sure that they're okay. I know if Paul's not okay with something and he knows the same thing for me, but this third person, they'll have no one there as a backup. So you have to be super mindful of it. And I think sometimes we can be a bit too mindful. And then, we can
over-focus on them.
And I'm very aware of it because I have a friend, a single woman, who does actually go out and meet couples and so on. And sometimes she feels like an extra part, like someone you can just pick up and drop her off. And she's like, I'm still me. I'm just, who's caring for me? Who's doing my aftercare?
Right. Right. Yeah. There's a piece of consent there too, through all of that, but also just it's more than that. I feel like it's consent, but it's also caring for that person in a way that's showing that, like, no, are you okay? What does the aftercare look like? Like, it's a group support system rather than like us two and you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's something that's really important to us, actually, is that empathy with the people that we're connecting with. And I guess maybe that comes back to the whole, we like to like people as well as have sex with them. One of our best experiences, I think I can talk about this one, is one of those parties, actually. And there was someone who'd had a really intense experience through the evening. And at the end, we ended up just hugging her for like half an hour.
We weren't even involved in the sex bit.
We weren't involved in any way, shape or form. But she was quite emotional, and it was like, well, we're just going to hug you and just look after you and stroke your hair for like half an hour. And we didn't really know.
Yeah, because the person who she was with just got up and left. And it's like, whoa, that's not... That's not how it should work.
But that was such a cool moment to actually be able to do that with someone, and it made us realise how important that was, having that empathy with those people. So it's been quite an interesting journey.
And it is quite weird, because especially if you have, I've come across a lot of people who are quite introverts, really. And this person in particular was a bit of an introvert. And to then be in a situation where you have all these extroverts, flexing their bits and, trying to get off of each other, and then you have an introvert who's being the focus of it all, and then they don't have the language of the vocabulary to say, I need some care here. Yeah. It can be quite hard. And I feel that too, because whenever we've had with other people, at the end of it, I'm so exhausted. I don't want to talk. I just want to sleep. I'm done. And Paul likes, I want to chat about it. I'm like, no, just give me a nap. So it's having to balance that out a little bit. You get a lot of, go on. It's just, he wants to kind of stay up and chat about it. I'm like, I'm worn out. It's emotionally exhausting, and as well as being physically exhausting, it's emotionally exhausting to be in a kind of situation like that. So,
I almost want to relive it almost immediately.
And I'm like,
so what was the best bit? What was that?
I don't remember. I was in a fugue.
Yeah, that's cool.
I love it. Yeah. How have you two... Oh, first of all, really quick before I ask that question, just for anybody in the UK who's listening that's maybe just getting started, the website is Fab Swingers, correct? That's the one
that's right.
about.
Which looks like something that a sixth form put together sometime in the 90s. It's such a
Yep.
I really hope it wasn't put together by a sixth former, because that makes me feel slightly icky.
Well, he's like 18 now. It's fine.
That's not fine.
I was like, that doesn't make it any better.
But we've been on other sites too, and we kind of feel there's a lot of sites that it's just... I mean, with Fab, it's definitely a case of it feels a little bit icky at times. And especially the kind of messages you get. I mean, I've seen enough cocks to last a lifetime. I'm sick and tired of them. And I have a massive issue with profiles in the way they're set out. There are people that I won't even talk to, depending what's on their profile. If you have a picture of you having sex with someone else, I have no idea if that person's consented to be part of your profile. That's got nothing to do with you as a person. And a lot of the time I do leave the sex admin, as I call it, to Paul. So, if it gets interesting enough, then bring me into the conversation. If it doesn't, then,
Nothing you never knew.
I never knew. Because, it gets a bit... But I have to say, a lot of the time, I haven't actually been proactive in the looking for people. I've kind of been sitting back and waiting for people to come to us a little bit. Apart from when we actually meet people socially, because when we meet to clubs, I'm quite open to going up and talking to people first. I think I need that kind of personal contact.
It's interesting you say that, you're not proactive on the websites, but you don't know. We might be proactive.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, you might be proactive. That's fine.
I'm being terribly proactive. Yeah. You have no idea what's going on.
You are doing, yes. So it gets a little bit tiring. And we do find that we go through phases of being like, we're going to meet loads of people, and we go on loads of dates with people, and maybe we have a couple of experiences, and then we're like, this is so much like hard work, and real life takes over. So we have a break for about 2 or 3 months, and then we go like, maybe someone interesting popped up. Let's speak to that person now. But it waxes and wanes a lot. It's hard ever being a constant. And I said I wouldn't talk about this, but I hate the term lifestyle. We both do. It's like, it's for us, it's not a lifestyle. It's a bit more like it's an addition to our life. It's an add-on. It's a value-added service. It's not. It doesn't define us. It doesn't define us. And a lot of people we meet, it's like, we're swingers, and and I'm like, is that the first thing you tell anyone? There's more to you than that. There's more, and even the term swings is a bit, I don't know.
Labels.
Yeah. Like I'm like, relationships are hard. Sex is very easy, and anyone can have sex with anyone. It's not a problem. It's about having that kind of relationship that you're close enough to someone outside of your own primary relationship that you can go and have sex with and have a good time with and go out on a date with, and yeah.
I can see a sort of end game scenario, which is where we drop that entirely. If we could find a small cadre of people, just the site, I mean, specifically.
Like drop off the site.
Find a small cadre of people that we enjoy spending time with. There would be no value in going back to Fab. And using it for anything.
Sometimes you need every club needs new members.
As people leave and new ones come in, sure. But it's interesting.
But in addition to that, Paul more recently has tried solo dating as well. And that's been a bit of an eye-opener. In that I wasn't jealous in the way I thought I might be. Because it's very different when we're kind of dating couples or speaking to couples, it's like we're both flirting and we enjoy that whole, the dynamic of being opposite another couple and doing the old bit of eye fucking or a bit of chit chatting about this, that, and the other, and making innuendos and whatever, and being in a situation where you were doing your solo flirting, and I'm like, oh, please don't say anything stupid. That's been interesting. I want to talk about your solo dating.
Can do.
Go for it.
Yes, I was just going to say it.
The floor is yours.
The floor is yours.
Well, that's been quite a new thing, actually, just recently. Because I obviously had this very long relationship, and that started when I was back in university. And so I never had that crazy 6 months to a year of sleeping with everyone that moved, right? That everyone's got in their past or history somewhere. And then I kind of left that and almost immediately ended up in this relationship. So I kind of missed that opportunity again. So we had a bit of a chat about it. It's like, it's not necessarily something that I feel bad about, but I kind of sort of disappointed I didn't get that opportunity to do it. I'm not disappointed about our relationship in any way, shape, or form. But it's like we're actually in a position where we're strong enough that actually we felt that maybe that would be something we could try.
It's something I'm very much aware of. I mean, I've had my fun times. I've had my inappropriate scenarios with when you're young and stupid, and you just sleep with one person in the morning, one in the evening, and then you have silly stories to tell afterwards. So I had that, and I was like, I wish he had that to kind of fall back on, because in a way, you kind of want to have those experiences like once upon a time I too did something inappropriate and then I, So Paul going out solo dating, I was like, yeah, go for it, have a bit of fun.
But interestingly, it almost didn't turn into that. So no. I started that sort of maybe thinking, well, maybe I'll just find some people to have casual sex with. And I very quickly realised that absolutely wasn't the thing I wanted to do at all. Because I just not interesting. Right? It's kind of easy to do, but it's actually kind of not very interesting for me at all. It's like I wanted to get to know someone and actually have a relationship with someone. So actually I kind of started thinking, well, actually it's more about finding a girlfriend, which seems a bit weird. And then I found someone really quite incredible, actually. And I've had quite an intense thing with her over a sort of short period, which has thrown up some things for us to deal with. So that's unfortunately had to come to an end. And I'm very hopeful that I can keep that, that relationship as a friendship. But it's thrown up some things for us in terms of trust and make sure that we prioritize each other, even when you're out and enthusiastic about something else that's going on. So I don't want to bring it down, but it's been
it's
we're bending that ruler again.
Yeah, but the things were actually, when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, you'd think they were quite small things and easily avoided. And it's something as simple as, like, I had no issue with Paul being out on a date. I was quite excited for him. I was like, what are you going to wear? Make sure you buy some aftershave, very excited for him for that. But it became a case of like, well, we talked about beforehand, like a second date. And the first one he checked in, and that's all I wanted, was just a message say like, my kidneys are still in me, I'm fine, and I'm not being chopped up, I'm all good. And then the second date he didn't. And that really threw me. And it's like, I don't care what you're doing. You could be going down on her like all evening. I don't care. But find 5 minutes to send me a message to let me know you're alive, And that was the issue. It wasn't what he was doing and who he was doing it with. It was like, what, you can't keep that little promise of just messaging me? And
then third day I was half an hour late.
Yeah.
And that was enough. So.
Yeah. And then the third day is like, well, brother, you were home by a certain hour and you told me what time you'd be home by. And then the time came and I'm like messaging like, I don't want to be that person, but, you said it this time and you're not here at this time. And that pisses me off. It wasn't, I'm glad you had a lovely time, But that really pissed me off because it's that little bit of trust, and it's the smallest of actions that you could have done. And if you can't do the smallest of actions, then what happens next?
Yeah, but we worked it out.
Very good. And I do hope they keep their friendship, and I kind of hope they kind of work things out because she seems like a lovely person.
She's really
so.
She's really cool. If you're listening, you're really cool.
Well, and I think those are some of the like growing pains along the way that you're like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's a half hour. And like, it's probably not a big deal if you're out with your buddies having a beer, but like, it's a different situation. Right. And so,
well, especially because it's new.
It's new.
Too.
Yeah. There's a whole lititany of reasons.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, agreed. And I think those missteps are actually kind of important in a way, because actually it makes you just, if everything was easy and you just followed the happy path, you'd never really understand what was important out of those things. So we were just mismatched. Like that half an hour didn't seem like that's such a big deal, but it was a really big deal to you. And it's like, okay, I get that. And and we can try to work through. Oh, that sounds awful, doesn't it? We can talk and work through it. But no, we can work out why that was such a big deal and make sure that we're reprioritizing things in our own heads to make sure that we're focusing on things that are important to the other person and not losing sight of that when you're, excited puppy dog, doing your enthusiastic thing.
And the thing is, you kind of always think like, well, we've talked about it. We've talked about every possible situation, what could possibly happen, and we're not going to fall for this one little thing. And it's almost a little thing that trips you up.
Yeah.
So, it's like, it could happen to anyone else, but it won't happen to us. Well, it can happen to anyone. So
turns out rules get broken. Yeah. Inadvertently or not.
Exactly. Right? And I'm cool. And having spoken about it since, I'm cool with it. I'm fine. I get it. I get what happened. Paul's had a harder time kind of forgiving himself over it. And I'm like, it's fine. I'm not going to keep going on about it. And he's still self-flagellating. I'm like, but I did wrong. And I'm like, yeah, but, shit happens. Just get over it. It's like, yeah, but I did something awful. I'm like, it's okay. It's almost like he wants me to be angry with him, and I'm not going to be angry with him because I might fuck up next time.
Yeah, well,
right? Well, we're all human.
And the good news is now it's recorded and it will be saved here forever, so you can come back and listen to it anytime.
Oh, I'm never listening to my voice. I'm never listening to my voice on record. It's awful.
No.
You're all right. In person's
I've never
fine.
watched a single show I've ever been in.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like, so the solo dating stuff, you're going down that path, but it sounds like you kind of dove in and you're taking a few steps back, and then maybe with the opportunity for it to go down that path again in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're starting to talk to people online now. So whether that will turn into anything, who knows? But
it's not.
But it's doing the same thing, right? It's flexing that muscle for me of like, well, how do I feel about you flirting with someone else in a solo way? So that's bringing that to the fore. So we're doing things in a controlled way. I try not to get too carried away with it so that we don't break us. Because actually our relationship is the most important thing to both of us, right? So we want to keep that core and make sure that we're safe and happy and that we're prioritizing each other before destroying it through.
And I'm also very mindful, even like right now, I have been chatting to people, but I'm very mindful of the fact that I don't want to lead anyone on if I have no intention of ever actually even going beyond that. And I am mindful of that. It's like, I wouldn't want anyone to kind of string me along a little bit. It just feels wrong. Thankfully, it turns out men out there are just complete shit. And I've been chatting to a guy for 2 days and the conversation's already dead. And you go like, oh, he can't even be bothered. He's a comedian. I'm funnier than him.
You're just a comedian in training.
I'm a comedian in training, that's true.
How have you two seen each other grow over your relationship, over exploring non-monogamy?
Oh, that's good.
It's been interesting.
It's got a good question.
I've let myself actually be more open than I ever was before. Like, I was able to talk about things, but not necessarily about the way I felt about things. It was very superficial. It's like, yes, in theory, all of this is lovely. It's like I'm the world's best parent because I read the book, So I'm the world's best non-monogamous because I read all the books. But experiencing it, it's been a bit of a ride for me. Your phone's going. Because I'm now actually having to not just expect. I know how I feel, but having to be able to convey it in a way that Paul understands. That it's not a personal. If I say something, it's not personal. Just it's been a bit of a journey where that's concerned. And we talk way more now than we. I mean, we've always talked a lot, but we do talk an awful lot.
Yeah.
And we often have to be mindful of the fact of when we're talking. Don't talk when you're tired. Then you get very antsy that way. Don't talk when you're rushed.
Yeah, Michaela, how have you seen Paul grow?
That's that's been it's been good. I mean, Paul has always been very, very good about being emotionally honest and open. He's much quicker to blame himself, which I don't like, because no one's perfect. I'm very self-forgiving, and I wish he would just be a bit more self-forgiving about when things go wrong or not quite as planned. But he's good. He's good. I don't know how to even put that.
Yeah, that's okay.
I like the look.
You like the look, yeah. No, he's good. He's always very open to talk about the difficult stuff. You know.
Do you think that's changed?
Yes, I do. Especially like Paul has. I'm sorry to say this, because it's say to your face as well too. Has this pattern of not trying to upset people. So in not trying to upset people, he will tell them sometimes what he thinks they want to hear. Whether by omission, or just kind of trying to bend things in a slightly different way so that you don't know. But it always ends up, in fact, when you find out about it, you just get more upset because, if you didn't try to be so careful about my feelings, you wouldn't affect my feelings. So you've changed that where that's concerned. He's much more honest about, I know it's going to be upsetting, but I need to tell you this. That's been good.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's always a bonus. Kind of cuts all the crap out of the beating around the bush. They just tell me what it was as opposed to trying, I don't want to tell you this. Yeah.
Instead of sugarcoating it.
Yeah, so don't sugarcoat it sometimes. Just put it out there.
I definitely agree with that, actually.
Yeah.
I definitely feel much more able to talk about how I feel about stuff than I ever did.
Yeah.
But I think it comes down to I'm not going to react in a crazy, volatile way.
No, and it's taken a long time to build that trust, actually, because I think we both had difficulties with previous relationships where being open and honest didn't necessarily give the good outcome. And actually now, it's the same thing, right? So we know we're not going to over explode or freak out at something that someone tells us. We might not be happy about it, but that doesn't mean that we'll just immediately storm out the house and throw things at you. Or,
We've never done that anyway.
No, I know, but
yeah,
that sort of stereotype. But it's that ability to actually have an honest and open conversation about something without too much fear of recrimination. We don't have to say Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And Paul, how have you seen Michaela grow?
It's a good question. I know whilst she was talking, I was thinking what I was going to say, and I don't really know. So
I'll look away that helps.
No, that's. I'll tell you to your face. But I think it's a similar story, actually, in that we've been able to talk about things. We've always had a thing about talking about relationships. We use Reddit a lot, and particularly on long car journeys into London and out again. It's always whoever's not driving's job to read out stories from Reddit relationship advice, and then we have a conversation about it. Not to poke fun at those people at all, because they're often in mental.
It brings up interesting topics,
mental dire straits. But it puts us. We can talk about a situation that we haven't got to before we get to it, and because we do that all the time. Oh my God, we do it all the time. We drive up to London a lot, so we end up doing it quite a bit, and it's good to put ourselves in those situations. And I think having done that all the way through, when we sort of see a scenario coming up, or we end up in a scenario which we're not, necessarily comfortable with, we've got reference points because we know how each other think about it, because we've already talked about that scenario probably multiple times. And I think that's been really useful. So that leads us to then being much more able to talk about stuff between us and know that we have a base understanding for most things. And I kind of bring it back to the point we were making earlier about if we'd opened our relationship right at the beginning, we would have blown up, because we don't have all those reference points at that point, right? We don't understand how we feel that we should react to a scenario that comes up. We haven't had that conversation. It's like, well, does cheating still apply in an open relationship? Well, yeah, of course it does. Or how does secrecy affect that? All those sorts of things. But we have that base knowledge now. So I think in terms of growth, we've both done that, but I think you've done that more, actually, and that you're much more capable of talking about those things and having being open about how you feel about stuff as well.
My go-to before would have been, if I didn't like what I was hearing or a situation I was in, I would just distance myself. It was like, self first, fuck you. So now I'm much more like, okay, I will tell you that I am upset. Not be afraid to say I am upset about this. But actually being able to even say the word sometimes is still quite difficult.
It's much more healthy now, though.
Yeah.
Because nothing festers. And it's really easy to have those things like, well, I won't mention it, but I'm going to be upset about it in myself.
Yeah.
And that's going to come out.
I'll give you the sulking treatment.
And that's going to come out because I'm not going to cook with you tonight. or I'm going to go out for a really long run. Just at the point you need me, or I'm not going to fold those pants. I'm going to let you do it. And those things do come out, and they're the things that cause resentment in relationships and break them up. And actually, we don't do that. Well, I hope not. Not obviously, anyway.
Yeah.
But even sometimes it would take, like, we would have maybe a clash of opinions, shall we say, and we take us a good 24 hours, 40 hours to process why we were upset, and then come back to it. And by which time, it's lost. It's out of context. And you can't really discuss it then, because it was like, well, why did you say this at the time? We're like, well, I didn't know how I felt at the time. So being able to just kind of bring those feelings up front quicker has been definitely an improvement as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to circle back to the conversation we had a little while ago around the imbalance in, I guess, bisexuality for males and females in the lifestyle, and have you two talk a little bit about your experience in that, because it's definitely something that we've encountered as well, and seems it's prevalent, where the females are kind of expected to be bisexual and the males are not, and that's just not the way humans are, right?
Yeah.
No.
And it does feel like, for women, it almost feels like a show. It's like, oh, you must take that little, and it's like, oh, look, if I'm not into you, I'm not into you. I don't care how beautiful your wife is. It doesn't mean that I want to kiss her or go down on her or anything like that. With men, we find that, was it bisexual under the right circumstances?
the magic bi.
The magic bi,
where
yes.
they pop up. So because there's a bit of a stigma to it for men in particular, I think that people hide it away, because they think that if they put that they're bisexual or bi-curious, whatever that means, on their profile, that couples will immediately reject them. And actually, if you start looking through profiles, you do see that. You do see people who just explicitly say, we will not play with bi men. And we've had people we've chatted to saying, oh, we've just realised you're bi, sorry. You're off the table. It's like, well, sorry, what? And you do hear, there's this sort of mythical, aggressive, bisexual sort of story that comes out to justify those positions from those people. It's, well, I did it once, and the guy was so aggressive, and he grabbed my cock and he tried to suck it, and it was really awful. And it's like, well, wait, did that really happen? Or are you just using that to justify your own, your own prejudice there? I don't know, right? But you see the same story comes up time and time and time again, which says to me that it's either there's a roving band of extremely aggressive bisexual men. I haven't met them yet, but maybe they're there.
Maybe they could introduce themselves to us.
Or it's just a convenient MacGuffin that no one can argue against. So you go, oh, you had that bad experience. Oh, well, fair enough then.
It must be all bi men.
Yeah, and it's like, no, that's not acceptable. So there is that. There is that, and so you see that. But you get people who then, unfortunately, it's self-perpetuating, because they then hide. They say, well, I'm straight. And then and then they message us, and our profile is really clear that if you're a single guy, we will not play with you if you're straight, because we don't like the sort of invisible barrier that generates. We've done it, but it wasn't enjoyable, because there's always that thing. It's like, well, right now it would be convenient if I put my arm around your shoulders just for stability. and they're like, and I was like, well, can I do that? If I do that, are they going to be all like, oh, he was an aggressive gay? And it's like, it's just such hard work. So by hiding, they perpetuate this story that no one's bisexual, and that's really weird to me. Yeah. So then you get these guys who message you and go, well, no, but I am bi. It's like, well, your profile doesn't say it. Well, no, but, it's just with the right people. It's like, well, okay, so what do you think is going to happen here? Do you think, are you really bisexual and you're hiding, or are you straight and you're pretending? And it's actually a really hard red flag to pick apart and work out which it is, because there are a lot of men, in our experience, who will say absolutely anything to get to the bedroom on the basis that, I know you said that's what you wanted, but actually when we're in the throes of it, you'll forget that, and you won't be upset, and you won't be bold enough to say, get out, because you lied to us. Yeah. And they think that they'll get away with that, and that's not how it works, right? We're not those people, but maybe that works for some people. I don't know. It wouldn't work for us. We'd kick them out naked. It'd be fine. And I hate that. I really hate it. And it's that idea that you have to hide away who you are to kind of generate this interaction with people that you want, but it isn't going to be quite what you want, because you're not being honest with yourself about who you are or what you want. Yeah. And unfortunately, that perpetuates the whole thing in the sort of I can't think of another word. Circles of people, not lifestyle.
But the same thing actually applies to women, though. Is I think a lot of women lie about being bisexual. They're not. They just want to have the whole, I've ticked it off the list, and I've kissed a girl, and my husband likes it when I kiss a girl, and But I've met a few women who I can see that you're really not into it. You're not into women at all, and you're just doing it because you kind of want to make it. It's like the cool girl phenomenon,
It's a bit like
it's like however you feel, who you don't. And at the end of the day, it's still about hearts, not parts, right?
That's right.
And it's all about. It's fantastic to have being open, but if you're not true to yourself, then what's the point?
It feels like everyone's trying to form themselves into the sort of standard male fantasy. It's almost like if you were a hugely powerful, single, patriarchal, societal man, and you were going to create this sort of sexual kink, and it was just for you, it would look a lot like it does, right? The women would all be bisexual. Everyone would be under 30 and super hot, and that's the sort of aspiration that you're putting out there. And actually, the reality is, people aren't like that. They're not. Everyone's not super hot. We've all got bumps and lumps, and that isn't representative of the sort of makeup of people in the world as well. So I feel like sometimes, and I don't know if this is true, but it feels like people are trying to force themselves into the sort of boxes that have been sort of laid out for them. And that's kind of where I have a problem with labels. And the labels force you into those boxes, and it's like that doesn't really work for real people, right? Real people are complicated and difficult and have wants and desires which don't necessarily fit those labels, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, go ahead. I appreciate you sharing all of that, because it's important to talk about and to acknowledge that all of that dynamic exists and is out there.
Well, and that it is, I think, your experience on Fab Swingers is probably no different than on any of the other dating sites out there, that there's a lot of men who are bi or interested in that, but will never admit it quote unquote publicly on a dating site, because
and we have met a few men like that. It was like, yes, and they're clearly really up to having a good time, but like, my girlfriend or my wife could never know. And I'm like,
yeah, and that's the
wife is okay with who you're going out with for an MFM because there's another woman, but if she knew that you did anything with the guy, then you kind of have an issue with it. It's like,
yeah.
But I do think that as a whole, the idea of the lifestyle is still incredibly patriarchal and incredibly sexist still. It's still about, and this is one major issue I still have with, like, the first party we went to, is like the women are still preening themselves and doing changes of lingerie between scenes, and it felt like scenes when the men go around in bed with a clean t-shirt on. I'm like, make a bloody effort. And it's still like women having to be this little kind of perfect ideal of what men want to see at a sex party, and men, where's your effort? How are you engaging me here?
Take socks off, man.
and you still see it all the time in all the profiles. You have like couple profiles, for example, picture after picture of a woman in different positions and just breasts everywhere, and then a single cock pic, and you go like, yeah, is that all you have to offer?
Dining out.
There's outside of the whole, let's everyone have fun and have sex together, I do find a few issues with the whole feminism and patriarchal idea of what it should look like and how people actually convey themselves. There is very much that, and you see that on all the sites and all the resorts, and it's still the same thing everywhere. It doesn't actually account for women as women in their own right, and it's still like they're there to be subservient to the male gaze.
That got very deep.
Sorry, I just really annoys me.
You got quite high. I like it.
No, it's all spot on. And I think, I was just going to offer one, I don't know, not to say a counterpoint to like the bi guys keeping that off of their profile, in that, for you, Paul, right? Like you said in your relationship before, Michaela, like it was part of who you were, but it didn't necessarily feel like something you were suppressing in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And so I can see for some people where it's not worth the hassle, right? Like, and they'll keep it to themselves unless they feel comfortable, right? And if they feel comfortable with you, they're willing to share that. And that doesn't, like, it's a hard one, right? Because in one sense, it's their story to own, but in another, by them keeping it sort of a secret, it does pull everybody sort of down with it. So it's a really hard one. And so, I don't know that there is the right answer is we don't treat people like shit and they just feel comfortable being who they are. That's the right answer.
Right.
The right answer is everyone could be honest about who they are and what they want.
Right.
without fear of
probably
judgment.
evaporate pretty quickly. So.
And I do find, especially if you're contacting us and you can see that you're bi, I'm not. Why hide the fact that you're bi? It's not like we're going to come out and be like, oh no,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, and I think it is an unfortunate thing that just seems to self-perpetuate. And I would really genuinely love it to just go away, and everyone just be open about what they're up to. But unfortunately, it's not going to be that easy because there is still an undercurrent of anti-gay or anti,
it's still very heteronormative.
Yeah.
Apart from women.
In your discussions in opening up your relationship, how did sexual health and safety play into that, and how do you keep yourselves safe both from a sexual health standpoint and just in going out? Like you said, Michaela, you wanted to know he wasn't being harvested, his kidneys being harvested for the black market, but so how do you two approach that?
And before you answer that question, I just want to say, thank you for not hiding that. Thank you for being open about your sexuality, no matter what that is. And just because the more people that can do that, I feel the better all of us are. So
mainly for Michaela as admitting she's a straight woman, right?
Yes.
Well, actually,
that's quite rare.
It is.
In a lot of ways, that's almost as shocking.
That's almost as shocking.
Some people.
It's quite rare.
Sexual health. Well, that's clear, right?
That's always no glove, no love. That's a very straightforward one.
Yeah, so we test ourselves regularly. We don't. We expect safe and protected sex with partners that we're having fun times with. It's as simple as that, really. Actually,
it's more than that these days because we've also come across an edition of "Are you vaxxed?"
Yeah. So
taking people out who are not,
it's become part of the screening now for us because we're not going to risk it. I had a really bad time when I got COVID, and I don't really want to go back there. So.
That was not fun. But we have actually had an issue with that too, with not the vaccine thing, but there has been with sexual health because we, if we do get serious about someone, especially if it's a single person, we do have kind of a little list of it sounds a bit. Something about 10 commandments, but it's we have boundaries, and one of them is sexual health. And we've had people go oh, I don't know why you're making a point of saying this before we meet. I'm well, we have to be upfront about it. It's and if you can't even have a conversation about your own sexual health, what makes you think I'm going to be going anywhere near you? If you can't be open about something so simple as when did you last get tested, then why would I even meet you for a drink? Because obviously you don't take it seriously enough to care about anyone else's health.
That sounds awful the way you put it, though. It's not. It's just about understanding where people are at, right? And making sure that we're all aligned in what our expectations are. But
it's a good way of actually sorting out the wheat from the chaff, though, because if you can't answer that, then you're not our people.
Yeah, and I don't want to get to a point ever where we're at a critical junction, if you see what I mean, and people have a mismatch in expectation. Well, I thought we were doing bareback. Well, we're definitely not. So that's out the door, Or I thought this was okay, or was that not okay? Oh, it's a bit late now. It's no, we should all be really clear. And it's not rules. It's just about expectations, I think, and expectation management. So if you want to do this, that's fine, but this is the kind of the way that needs to plan out. And I think that's I think people often forget that step. They get it carried away, and I guess I'm the worst for that, right? Getting carried away in the enthusiasm and going, "Ooh, this is fun," and then suddenly it's well, wait, actually, hang on, you did a misstep there because you did a thing, and there's 4 people or more, right, that have to kind of sync up there. So I think it is a really important conversation to have, but it's not very sexy. So I think people skip it because I don't want to put them off by talking about condoms. It's but you have to, because when are you going to have that conversation? Just before you have sex? Because that's way less sexy.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah. And we have a term for that, right, which is we refer to it as the email, but also there's this whole thing of consent is sexy, and this is part of that consent process, is understanding what things are enjoyed and what things are.
And it's also a two-way conversation. We have our guidelines that we like to share, but tell us what your guidelines are. Tell us what you want. What are your expectations? What are your no-nos?
What would you like to do?
What would you like?
We can do that.
But just kind of like make it clear so that not just for us, but in your own head, what do you want out of this? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good conversation. Yeah.
And I think it's like you said, it's important to have it earlier, right? And get it, not necessarily get it out of the way, but like make sure everyone's aligned before you do invest that time.
Right.
Absolutely.
It's part of the selection process. That sounds awful to put it like that, but
it's a job application.
It is a bit like that, right? If you want to find that four-way connection, the last thing you want to do is everyone be really into each other, and then realize you've got some massive disconnect when it comes to the sexual part.
To the basics.
That would be really disappointing for everyone. I know that when we got really close to someone and then it doesn't happen for whatever, I feel quite sad about that, right? Yeah. So I felt like I had a connection with you. So I'd much rather have that conversation at a point where I'm not that invested. So, we're not doing it out the gate. It's not, hello, this is us. Here's our photos. Here's our list of things we need you to do. It's like, it's not, there's a too early as well as a too late.
Yeah, there's a time and place.
Yep.
Do you two have any bloopers that you would want to share around navigating relationships? And they can be sexual or not, but we like to ask this question to kind of show that sex and relationships don't always go as planned, and that it's normal to have mistakes and bumps along the way.
Oh,
go on then.
Go on. Which one would you like?
There's a long list of shit that went wrong.
We have this idea that bloopers are good. When things go wrong, are good because it either gives you another AFOG, another opportunity for growth, or is it in a party story? When things go really wrong, that's when you can have a good laugh about it. We've had a date where she turned up pregnant and didn't tell us because people previously had an issue with it. And I'm like, all the more reason why you should have told us.
Yeah, that was
lovely people. We've had, I hope this isn't TMI, but we've had one date with this guy where we had a really, really good time, and Paul had such a good time that he did his usual shaking, fating thing, and it really freaked out the other guy, and I had to kind of go, it's fine, he'll come back to you in a minute, just give him a second. And the other guy was so freaked out because he'd never seen anything like that before, and I'm like, it's actually good on you, it means you've done a really good job because my boyfriend has now fainted, so well done. Yeah, but it's all fun.
There was that time you told too much information on the podcast, and I got it right.
I was just going to say, I think there's both of those bloopers are opportunities for disclosure ahead of time. You should probably tell people you're pregnant, and you should probably tell people if you faint at any point during
exactly.
Well, it doesn't always happen.
But we've also had like, oh my god, we were so excited about this one date, and he was looking so promising. We'd had it social beforehand, and he was really cute. And we got to the hotel room, and he was stuck in traffic for hours on end. And you think, well, let's make the best of it. Yay, hotel sex, So it's about what you make of the situation more than anything else. When things go wrong, it's the opportunity to just kind of turn them around.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and like you said earlier, like every time you go out, it's a date for you two,
yes.
and basically anything else that happens is icing on the cake.
It's a really nice way of setting our expectations really low.
Oi! I expect a good date out of it, if you don't mind.
No, but we have a nice time. We always have a nice time.
Yeah,
but if you go out, I think it's that sex club thing, right? If you go to a sex club and you've got this expectation that you're going to have an amazing time with another couple, and then if that doesn't happen, you then feel really bad about the experience. Whereas for us, we're going to a sex club where we're going to be surrounded by a bunch of cool people, and we're going to have a brilliant time.
And if
something else happens, that's brilliant. That's icing on the cake. It's not why we're there. And it's really important for us to set that level in our heads. It's like we're going out for a cool time, and we're going to surround ourselves with opportunities to have cooler times, but the base level is we're going to have the best time we can have, right? And I think that's kind of a relatively new thing, but actually it's been really good for us to mentally put ourselves in those positions.
Yeah.
Because there are people who go to sex clubs and they want the validation from other people that other people want them and desire them. And then when they don't get it, they leave utterly distraught. And I think that's a terrible shame.
Yeah, we've seen that.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you for everything. We want to be respectful of your time, but we did want to give you the opportunity. If there's anything we haven't talked about that you wanted to get out there, And again,
Now is your opportunity.
a huge amount of gratitude for everything you've shared and talked about. We've covered a lot of ground, and it's been amazing. So thank you both.
Thank you. It's been really fun.
Thank you for letting us share, actually. It'll be interesting because so far all the stories we hear tend to be like US-centric, and
it's not any different.
it's not any different whether you're across the pond or not, to be honest.
We just have funny accents.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, we got nothing to plug, right? We did this because it was interesting, and it's an interesting way for us to think about.
Yeah.
And actually, it's been really nice because you ask interesting questions, and that makes us think about things differently. And that's the reason we came. So.
And I think a lot of the times when we do actually meet people, part of it is the attraction of being with people where you can be open and honest about your kink side. Sometimes you just want to have an open conversation about, like, look, my other boyfriend did this. How would you like when things didn't quite go as planned with your solo recently? It would have been really useful to have had someone that Paul could speak to outside of me. Someone who would be judgmental, just be understanding of it. And yeah, that would have been. And you need those people. And I mean, I'm lucky that I do have people that I could talk to outside who wouldn't be judgmental, but Paul, maybe not so much. That's a whole other topic.
About talking to your your vanilla friends about stuff that you do. And I find they always fall into one of two camps. They either are envious or they're vicarious. But very rarely, at least in my experience from my male friends, they either want to know everything you did because they want to replay it in their head, or they're envious that you're doing something that they could never have that opportunity to do.
And think you're an awful person.
And they think you're a bit of a shit, yeah. And there's very little understanding or sympathy, actually, which is why that got quite difficult for me, because I don't actually have lifestyle friends, but I don't have people who aren't vanilla that are my close friends. And so actually talking about when I'm feeling really awkward about, my second girlfriend, and they're just going, "You got two girlfriends, what are you worried about?" It's like, but I feel wretched about the situation that I'm in right now, and you can't understand that, and that's a really tough. That's a tough place to be.
They'll look at you and be like, "Well, but you have two people. Why? Like,
problem solved. Just get rid of one.
Get rid of one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, no, that's not what I want. That's not like that. Just try to understand my perspective here.
That's like you crying because your diamond tiara is too heavy on your head and your wallet's too big to go in your pockets. What are you bitching about?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm crying because I've got so much money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you both.
Yes.
This was
Thank you so much.
fantastic. We appreciate your time and your vulnerability with us, and we're just excited. So thank you.
Cool.
It's been really, really fun, actually.
You guys have a good day.
Thank you for stretching out.
You have a wonderful evening.
Yes, have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thanks again.
Bye.
And we're back. A huge thank you to Michaela and Paul for coming on the show and sharing your story. We loved talking to you and are so excited to get your story out there. So thank you again.
Yeah, I will just echo that gratitude. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. A quick reminder to go check out our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Again, I say it all the time. But on our website, you can find information about our Patreon community, about our upcoming virtual events, our upcoming in-person events. You can find podcast show notes and reach out to us and a lot more. So go check it out.
Yes, and while you're there, one other thing that we haven't told you can do is check out our...
At least not today.
We've told you a lot today. But check out the resources tab. One of our favorite resources that is on there is stdcheck.com. You save $10 if you use the links, and it helps support the show financially. So we are eternally grateful to you for doing that. Plus, it helps you be an awesome sexual health advocate. If you're going to be out at anybody else's events, any events of your own, or meeting people, we highly, highly recommend getting tested and knowing your status so you can have an educated conversation with whoever you're hanging out with.
Go check it out as well.
It's the service MNI use. It's super awesome. It's fast, it's easy, and it's pretty affordable. It's about $130 with the discount for a 10-panel test. You don't want to miss it. Sometimes it's so easy and fast. We do it just for fun.
Whoa. I don't know. I'm not going to comment on that one.
All right. You don't have to. I already told the truth. So check that out. Thank you again in advance for your support in all things that we do.
Yes. Thank you. Next week, we have an interview with Brittany and Chad. They are the hosts of the Tangled Up Together podcast. Go check that out in the meantime, but come back next week and listen to their episode.
And until then, if you're a Christmas celebrator, have a great Christmas.
Yes, have a wonderful holiday season, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.